Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists. Consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 6 of the Power of Witness series. This is our final episode for this series, but you're definitely going to want to listen. We talk all about takeaways and this whole experience for everyone involved.
I mean, you've already hit play. You might as well just finish it out.
Yes, and if this happens to be the first one, the first one that you're listening to, go back and listen to the other 5 first and then jump into this. But sorry, go ahead, Catherine.
I was just going to say, yay, they actually pressed play. This is what we've been hoping, that that you're here with us. So thank you for pressing play on this one. It's so worth your time. It's an important, it highlights the importance of taking a minute to assimilate and process work you've done. We as a society are not good at that. We're ready to rush to the next thing. At the end of every session I have with people, I ask them to give me a takeaway. You're going to hear about that. That assimilation is so important. So thank you for giving yourself that opportunity to assimilate what you've been listening to.
Yeah. And I just, again, I wanted to just throw a couple of thank yous out there to some people. For one, everybody who showed up and who volunteered to be a part of this. It is amazing what you all went through, what we all went through together. And also to Catherine, this was a lot of work. We've talked a little bit about how this was a tool for getting some exposure to the cohorts that she's going to be running in February and March of this, again, privately.
And beyond.
And beyond. And, but that, the value and the work that everybody came and did here is huge. And I just so people kind of have some context, this episode that you're about to listen to was recorded 3 days before Christmas. So we were this was in the heat of the holidays and the heat of everything going on in COVID and a pandemic and the holidays. People showed up. People showed up every week and put in a hell of a lot of work. So thank you to everybody who did that. Thank you, Catherine, for putting in all of the effort to make it happen again. Emma and I are not equipped to do anything like this. So thank you for making it happen.
Well, me trying to do anything technologically close to what you do to produce these podcasts would never happen. So again, we're bringing our best to the table and making something beautiful with it.
That's right.
Collaboration.
Well, it's teamwork.
And if you're interested in finding out more about the Power of Witness and the cohorts Catherine is doing, again, go to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and click on the resources tab. You can find a Power of Witness, all the information there or in your little podcast player. Links to everything.
Could be a big podcast player.
Sure. In your podcast player or on our website, you can find links to everything. So
I just had this great image of somebody holding one of those huge 80s boom boxes, but listening to a podcast instead of hip hop or something.
This is my podcast player, yo.
This is my big podcast player, yo.
And have it blaring, all of the Normalizing Non-Monogamy episodes blaring.
Yes.
They won't get looks at all, right?
No, definitely not.
That's how you create your tribe.
Yeah, I was going to say they might get looks and then they might have following like the Pied Piper, all these people lining up to listen and get in on the action.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, well, I think
I think we set the tone for this one.
I was on that note, let's jump into the takeaway episode.
All right. Welcome everybody to our wrap-up episode. So we wanted to give this episode, this topic, an episode of its own because it feels really important. And personally, I think we rush through endings and rush through transitions as in our society. And so anytime that I have the chance to slow that down and ask people to ground a bit and sit in the transition moment, I find that we tend to take more from an experience. I do this in my yoga classes. I often teach classes where we focus on the transitions more than the poses themselves. And at the end of every class, after that wonderful part where you just lie there in Shavasana, we call it, before you move into your day, I always have people roll over on their sides and take a bit for this transition and reflect on what they pulled from their practice as they step off of the mat. And so that's what we're doing tonight. Is we're going to curl up in a ball. And you can if you want, but we are going to just take a hot minute here to sit in the transition before we call this over. So at the end of my client sessions, I always have asked my clients about 5 minutes before we wrap up to just take a deep breath and report a takeaway. And what this means is it could be anything that resonated from the session, something that irritated them from the session, something that they need to chew on a little bit more, something that they want to research some more. Maybe it's something that they are feeling motivated to do, an action item. Maybe it was something that they learned about themselves or their partners. And so that's what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to give you an opportunity to share some takeaways. And I've given our participants some ideas about different ways that they might share takeaways. I think that, again, this takeaway time is important because it also helps you look at what value did you get after the investment of time that you just made. And it helps you launch from the session, or in this case, the experience, into how you want to take it into your life. So I have given everybody questions ahead of time to discuss, and I'll share that now with the listeners. So what I've asked is for each person, not just a couple, but for each person to share a takeaway from the overall experience, one from being on the hot seat, one from being on the top row of the bleachers with me, and then one from giving and or receiving feedback. So this is the flavor of the takeaways we're going to do. And then we're going to wrap up with some questions about any things that these couples have implemented from their sessions and any next steps to serve their relationship. So that's what you're going to hear from everybody tonight. And I did not assign who's going first. So we'll see who volunteers.
So I think my personal takeaway is that I really haven't dealt with that child that was wounded. I've resolved it. That's maybe not a good word, or I don't know, but she's still hurting and she doesn't like to go back there. And when Bill brings up his concerns and issues at that time, I immediately go back to her. And that's why I keep pushing him away, because I guess I really haven't. I thought I dealt with it, but I haven't really dealt with it. And, I guess I hate that girl that I was when I married him. I mean, I loved Bill, but I was so clueless. And so, I don't know. I don't know what I was doing. And when he brings me back to that time, it feels devastating. And I feel angry at him because I'm angry at me, that person that I was, and I haven't reconciled that yet.
My big takeaway I have is that probably an act of grief and understanding grief for who I was and how I've changed as a person. And I really need to sit with that. I mean, I need to sit and let that person pass away and grieve that passing and mark that person appropriately, and then celebrate who I've become. I mean, that to me would be the big takeaway that I have to work with. From the personal side of things. There's a lot more with everything else.
Okay, thank you for sharing that and taking that question of something that resonated with you and sort of pulling it into what you plan to do with it. Bill and Felice, how about for you when you realized this takeaway for you personally, any thoughts about, with this knowledge of what you need to do, what you plan to do about it?
Well, I don't really have, I don't know what it is, the capacity to deal with her 20-year-old Felicia anymore. I mean, I love to work on her, but I'd rather focus on me now. And that doesn't seem like a good use of time. But Bill and I have a marriage counselor that is non-monogamous friendly here, and that Bill sees her all the time, once a month. But maybe he and I should work on more of that issue with her. Though she's not my therapist, and she makes that very clear that she's Bill's therapist. So, but if this has to do with Bill and Bill's issues, then I'm sure we can work on that.
Yeah, it is a, I definitely hear you on the wanting to just focus on the present. And I will say that, I think I mentioned this one during your session, that for me, cultivating that relationship with parts of myself that aren't necessarily my favorite, doing bits at a time instead of waiting until it's something big or something really hard has certainly been, I call it the simple but difficult solution, where it's not something that's terribly difficult to do. It's pretty simple, but it isn't terribly comfortable, and it can be really impactful, but it definitely is uncomfortable. And I'll just say that, at least in my experience, focusing on who you are today is an even richer experience when you are able to have a soothing and restored relationship with other parts of you that you have shame around. Or
right. And both my parents are gone, and it's like futile to, it seems like that part of me is gone, like they're gone. I'm not that girl anymore, and I can't get answers from them. You know what I mean? But I can use it to help me help Bill. And I've been trying to be more like, Bill, what do you need from me when he's kind of has these moments of crisis? I ask him, what do you need from me? And how much and what he needs from me at that time. I think that's helpful, because if he tells me he's going to discuss the time in our marriage early on, then I can prep myself for that and listen to him and try not to regurgitate me, because that's a little self-centered. I think that it's all about me. It's all about me. And so I'm trying that, and to be a little more trying to be with him in the moment to discuss it, and it's not about me. So I'm really trying that.
I think the irony is that I think by grieving and sort of burying the old self, I can focus on the here and now much better and celebrate who that person is. And so I think doing that, I can join with Felicia's project of being the self and being focused on who she is today, and not delve into the past so much, and sort of let go of that, while still taking your point of that person's survival, that person's coping with that time being something to celebrate, to give that former self a pat on the back that everything was okay and you made it, and look who you are today.
Which I do all the time.
That's great. And I think that's I love that. That's definitely a wonderful tool that I often teach, called broadcasting or I call it preambling, where you say, I need to talk about this time. Here's what I need from you. Or if you hear Bill starting to talk, for you to ask, what are you needing from me? And then then we have a better chance of sort of steeling ourselves, if you will, to say, okay, not about me, not about me, not about me. I'm going to be here as an adult for my partner. I could be the adult standing in for this part of him that he's trying to let go of and grieve. So wonderful tools that I hear you all sharing. Before we move away from you all, is there anything that you want to share as a takeaway about being on the top row of the bleachers and or giving or receiving feedback?
Well, Catherine, Lisa's trying to get me for years to be a better listener. Get out of that problem-solving space and get into that listening space. And so this is really wonderful practice in doing that. And the observations from up there are almost everyone else has issues and problems that we can relate to, and that we can take things from their own experience and apply to ourselves. And, just basically gratitude and just, high fives all around to everyone for being so courageous and so, wonderful and brave to share what's going on with them. And so I think that's that's really the experience. So it was, you teaching us skills that I think are useful for the future, and how good it feels to be listened to and how to listen to others.
Yeah. I was a little shitty at the beginning, and I apologize for that. But after I heard everybody else's stories, you guys really, there's so much vulnerability that just makes my heart gush. And I really appreciated that from everybody else. And it's interesting psychologically that when people are vulnerable, you seem more close to them, that you're like, I see you and I respect you. And I understand what you're going through.
Yeah, it really is powerful to when we can be brave enough to put our shields down. I was just finishing the last touches on the module I'm doing about nonviolent communication, the work of Marshall Rosenberg, and that is the basis of this amazing framework that we can use to communicate more peacefully with each other, is when we're willing to be vulnerable, because it is very difficult to keep defenses up or get weapons in your hands when somebody opens and says, here I am without a shield, without weapons, vulnerable to you. And you see them for what they are, and you see the how much more we are all similar than different. It makes it really brings the violence of our communication down. He's a brilliant man. So thank you for sharing those reflections from the top row of the bleachers and about giving and receiving feedback, and how you all plan to launch forward. Thank you. And thanks for being part of this. You all were brave to start and always had so much interesting feedback to share.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Jack and Jill, do you need a refresher on what you're talking about?
Yes, please.
Okay. So takeaway from overall experience, being on the hot seat, being on the top row of the bleachers, and giving and receiving feedback. Then we'll go to things that you've implemented and what your next steps are.
Awesome.
Okay.
So I think for my overall experience, I'm also going to jump back into the other power of witness that we did with you. Just learning more about me being the gas and Jill being the brake more. This has helped us flip that around. Like, I feel like we're in a lot better place around communication and all that. And then, also talking with you, or, being on the hot seat around the old covert contracts and subconscious agreements and, cultural agreements that we had, bringing that into talking about that now and just being heard on that and, working through that. I think it's good. Like, we're in a good place with it, and we're in control of our relationship. We get to make this what we want it to be. And that I'm super pumped for that.
That's great. Anything that you want to share about being on the top row of the bleachers or giving and receiving feedback?
It's wonderful. I again got to see that I am an advice machine. And it was just really good to know that that wasn't okay, and to really exercise that empathy muscle, and find where the where whoever was talking was, or was on the hot seat, what they were going through. And what's interesting is, or I want to thank everyone for the vulnerability. I actually was listening to No More Mr. Nice Guy today, and that's a book.
Which is a book.
Yes, it's a book. But he talks about, we think that people connect with us because we have it all together. And everyone here, we actually connect around our foibles, our humanness. And it was everyone here, like, you laid it on the line, and it was awesome. So
yeah. Let me just jump in real quick, Jack, to say that, just to clarify, advice is not a terrible thing to do. There is a place for it, especially when it's solicited. And
Absolutely.
when the person you're talking to has their lid fully back on and they're ready for problem solving and they ask for it. I think it's just that we overuse it. And I think that it can be frustrating because when we use it, it's because we're hurting for them. And we want to do something to help. And so it comes from such a good place. And then often we'll see it land, like a lead balloon, and we're going, but this is coming from such a good place. Why are you not excited to hear these words? And why aren't you putting it into action? And so advice has its place, but usually we go to it too fast and then we're frustrated because it doesn't work. And so the feedback I was trying to teach you, was trying to give you other tools in your toolbox besides the advice hammer. So I'm glad that you've taken the opportunity to learn how to use those other tools.
And I think I've used those tools in the last couple of days with Jill.
That's great.
So,
all right.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Jill, what takeaways would you like to share with us?
So my biggest takeaway from being in the hot seat was to give myself permission to fully step into the conscious role of this new, what do we call it? Contract?
I can't
I don't
give
like
advice. Paradigm. Yeah.
That Jack and I have created to, I think what I've, it's just it's just making the subconscious conscious. And somewhere's in there, it was just this thought that my subconscious is still operating a lot on the old contracts and the old rules, and still, which, like Jack was talking about, the brake and the gas pedal, like that's part of my old contract. And to be in a space where I could give myself that permission, like, hey, it's time now to consciously step into this, to take my subconscious along and move it from the subconscious into the conscious. So that, I think, was the best part of this. As for sitting on the hot seat, it's always really, really uncomfortable, but I already know that uncomfortable always brings magnificent growth and great personal reflection. It's like a mirror whenever you're in the hot seat. And so I am learning to willingly go there.
That's wonderful. What about being on the top row of the bleachers with me and the feedback giving and receiving? Any takeaways there?
Oh, the top row is so good. Like was already said, the empathy that you feel for those who are on the field down in the mud. You might, sometimes that's what it feels like, you're down in the mud, but from those of us on top, you're playing a great game. And just to, feel like you're in that game with them, you're cheering them on. But then also to be able to see, again, it's another reflection of our own relationship and our own squabbles and fights that we have. And it looks so much clearer from up top. When you're down in the bottom slinging mud, there is really nothing clear. But when you have that opportunity to see others, you're like, oh, that's simple. Like, I can change that. Again, it's like, it's kind of the shift between the conscious and the subconscious. Like, it's like the fog rolls away. So being on the top row is not that uncomfortable. But it's very clarifying.
Great.
And feedback, there too. I have learned, I would say in the last 2 years, I've learned to absolutely love feedback because for so many reasons. Number one, it really produces great growth. Number two, it often is very affirming. I don't know. That's just, yeah.
Okay, great.
And it's very, in this group, I would say it's super caring. And that's very validating, very affirming.
Great. I'm so glad you felt that way. Anything that any plans you have for the next step of continuing to grow yourselves and your relationship that you want to share?
I think just carrying on, keeping on the path that we're on of just like learning to trust each other, trust the relationship, and to continue to work on communication and work on a new contract.
Mm-hmm.
And do things consciously and intentionally. Like just, I don't know, we've been given so much more material around where we were living, just kind of unintentionally or unconsciously, not, just to be willing to bring those more to the surface.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me twice, coming along for this ride as well. It's been wonderful to have you.
We'll probably sit the next one out.
I'll miss you. Who will I force to go first on everything? Thank you both.
Thank you for all you do.
Yes, thank you.
It's always a pleasure. All right. Who would like to share next? All right. David and Amanda are pointing at each other, but I guess that means that they're going to go together.
Well, this whole process was transformative for us in many ways. And, for me, starting with really just feeling Bill and Bill talk about remorse and missing a part of his life, that really just, from that bleacher perspective, really was powerful. And that sort of set things off for me to, find things in really what each person said that really resonated for me personally, in a way that, I'd never done any group therapy like this. I feel like I've done a lot of therapy, but never in a group. And, wow, it works pretty well. It makes a lot of sense. It helps.
Great.
Being on the hot seat is something I had a lot of anxiety about. I can say that once we were there, y'all disappeared, which I guess is a good thing. I felt very, very heard in the feedback, and well supported. But Catherine, you were really able to hold our attention during our session, and I think I was anxious about that, and so that that was easier than I had imagined. And once we warmed up, I feel like we got a lot of good work done. Learning about stories and assumptions, and the platinum rule, and just really what goes on in our communications. We've learned this a lot of different ways, but the way you frame things was really helpful, at least for me.
So glad to hear that. So glad to hear that. Anything about being on the top row of the bleachers, or anything else about feedback you'd like to share?
Well, the top rows of the bleachers, I think a couple of folks have said it, and you kind of set us up for this, in that it is really like you're observing this world that you live in, but it's a little microcosm and you're not one of the players. Mm-hmm. And it's really amazing when you realize that the patterns are the same. The themes are the same. And then, with some of the additional work that you've had us do, thinking about ways to help be more rational with those and less reactionary. is great. And seeing it from that perspective, seeing others go through it, whether it's Casey and Laura or Jack and Jill, or Bill and Felicia, is all just really neat to say, oh wow, that's some of the same stuff.
Great. Thank you so much for those reflections. Amanda, would you like to share your reflections on that? And then I'll volley it to both of you about your next steps and anything you've implemented so far.
Yeah, the kind of the overall experience for David and I have said for a long time that, I'm speaking French and he is speaking Latin, but we are both Google. Like, we want to give each other the whole entire world. We just need to be asked the right way. And Catherine, you have been able to help kind of bridge the gap of what happens for both of us in that moment when David's looking for more answers and I'm shutting down, and his brain is doing A, B, and C, and mine's doing X, Y, and Z, and just kind of helping us see that there are ways to, as David was saying, recognize the patterns and kind of stop and ground yourself, and then kind of work through those. And again, from the overall experience, realizing, it may be French and Latin with us, but, it's also kind of two different languages amongst all of us. And we're all, coming to this with kind of the same common theme of wanting to work on ourselves and work on our relationships and work on the bigger picture of kind of ethical non-monogamy and all the benefits that those things give us. So
well said. Thank you.
So being on the hot seat was great. I liked it. Feeling like I had the backup of everybody else. That if I got nervous and said something stupid, that I had the ability for other people to kind of understand and know and help walk that back. So the support, the backup team felt really great. David and I have also been saying that we think that BDSM or kink or anything might be the cure to so many things. And I think, Catherine, we are now realizing that the new kink is hot seating, and you need to take that over and bring world peace to everyone.
Just that. Okay, thank you. Put it on to do list.
Yeah. And then, just the hearing and giving and receiving feedback. I think we've all learned that, the words of affirmation are hard for me, but hearing and having to say some of those things that felt kind of superficial, all of a sudden didn't feel superficial anymore. They kind of felt real and meaningful. And so that was great.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. So anything that you all are willing to share, if there's one small thing that you feel like you've implemented that's helped your relationship thus far, and or you can share anything, next steps that you have to serve your relationship.
We've both noticed times when we need to take out the adult chair. Like we're definitely recognizing we're recognizing each other's triggers better over the last few weeks. And that also probably is in part because we did, in terms of next steps, decide to engage you and have been working with you as a coach remotely. Mm-hmm. So we've done 2 sessions. And
then also, now that we have kind of the tools to hold each other accountable, being able to do that as well.
Okay. Wonderful.
For the next.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I remember in our discussion before you all decided if you're going to do this, you were both very nervous about this. And I just want to thank you for, after hearing your trepidation, the amount of bravery and vulnerability that you brought means even more, because I got to hear how nervous you were, and not all the listeners will hear that. So I just want to say that you guys have come a long way, and I really appreciate you being so brave and bringing it like you did.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks really to everybody here for helping with that.
Absolutely. All right, Laura and Casey.
Casey's put me in charge of going first, which is awesome. From like the overall experience of just being in this, I think it's for me, helped with compassion in my own relationship, being present for everybody else's, like, I don't know, hardship almost. I mean, I guess we all didn't have hardship, but being present and really focusing on what everybody else was saying, I think gave me just a different perspective on listening and compassion with Casey in my own life. So I think I had kind of been skipping that part, like hearing his words, but like not really emotionally connecting with what he had to say. So even just being present for everybody else kind of, I don't know, triggered something in me to say, I need to be present for this too. Like, this is important. So I thought that's kind of where, like, my big takeaway. The hot seating part, I don't, I felt like our hot seat kind of got weirdly derailed from the topic that I thought we were going to go on.
Yes,
So, like, I mean, like, I was going one place, or I thought I was going one place, and then we went somewhere totally different. So I think that also was hard for me to take in. I like having plans. I like having like I like having specifics. And so when it went somewhere totally different, it just gave me a lot more to think about. So that was interesting on the hot seat. I mean, I was comfortable on the hot seat. That part wasn't so much, but after, I was uncomfortable. So
yeah. And it is, when we were planning these, knowing we only had 50 minutes, I definitely wanted to come in with a plan, and pretty much stuck with that. And you guys, it definitely went in a different direction, which honestly is more, it's a more real life version of what a coaching session is like, where we have an agenda, we have ideas, and part of my training and my belief is going with what feels immediate and rich in the moment, and in Gestalt therapy, we call it what's in your forefront, like what's right here. And so it was a little derailing and a little bit uncomfortable for me too, because it was also harder to wrap up in a shorter amount of time. And yet I also have a lot of faith and trust in when something is, when I feel pulled and feel the momentum of our work pull toward an issue the way it did, that's where we needed to go, even if we had all hoped and planned for something a little different. So I appreciate you guys rolling with me on that, and I'm looking forward to, we've decided to do a follow-up session to try to right the ship a little bit. So we'll be, I'll be looking forward to doing that with you all. But I agree that was a little disorienting, and I'm sorry that it left you feeling a little uncomfortable afterwards.
Oh, I mean, uncomfortable to me isn't like a bad feeling. I mean, personally, I like feeling uncomfortable. I mean, truly, because when I feel uncomfortable, it means I'm growing. Yeah. And so I'm not mad about feeling uncomfortable after the session. Like I mean, my agenda may or may not be what needs to be happening at the moment. Like, truly, my agenda is probably off base generally, but and also, I mean, this isn't all about like Laura. This is about kind of us, and so it was good. It was good. The top row of the bleachers was great for me because I love to hear other people's life. So it felt really good to kind of not be in it. And it also taught me a little bit to top row of the bleachers, my own life sometimes, because I am a super emotional person. Like I'm like really into it. Like, I mean, my heart is like on the outside sometimes. And so feeling my heart hurt constantly doesn't feel super great. So being able to get up to the top row of the bleachers for a little while and just like see what's happening with more clarity is really helpful. So I thought that helped with the skill, because instead of being in my head thinking, what am I going to say next? What kind of problem solving do I have to do? What do I have to do? I can actually just hear and then not have to do, that feels good to me. So.
Yeah. And I would say that, gosh, the way you said that, to me, that's one of the things I hope people learn from giving feedback in this different way is to be able to take that advice, that need to give advice, off the table, where really all you need to do is be present and feel it and just ride the ride with them, and then share the experience you had. When we have that pressure off, or we're not thinking of what we've got to do, we can be more present. And that is such a beautiful way to show up for another human being. So thank you for sharing all that, Laura.
Yeah, I can't follow up that. You said that so beautifully.
Should have gone first then.
But then I would just keep talking, and then it would be 2 hours later, and yeah, I knew I had to let her go. My overall takeaways from this is, one, I talk a lot when she can't mute me. Two, I feel like, wow, I've got a lot of emotions that I think I have hid from myself. And I think, well, I guess I can go into that because that's more of a takeaway from being on the hot seat. That I've got, this course gave me, I think, some of the fundamentals of being able to, one, recognize those. Two, it gave me the courage to even speak about them. And so having tools like understanding when my brain goes to that childhood place, or really just, the mess, and being able to recognize that, and somehow you rationally kind of, at least recognizing that's a rational thing to do. So then you can kind of either, push leave the situation until you're ready to communicate, because that brain isn't the place you need to be telling your spouse or partner things.
Right.
So having that, that was just, like I said, it's very fundamental, but just recognizing that, I think, will really help just how I proceed in life in general, which was really nice. Overall takeaway, it's just amazing how different we all are, but our problems are really, at the root, very similar. And like Laura said, to be able to sit back and listen, to stuff that you just never get to listen to. People don't talk about this stuff, and in maybe a group of three with a partner and a coach, but to do this in a group and hear the things that go on behind closed doors, I think was really, it's really connecting, one, which I love, but also just, I don't know, hopeful too, understanding that we're all dealing with the same little issues, was big. So takeaway from the hot seat was, and maybe this is just me, but I feel like just having all these people hold me accountable and being honest. Like, I don't want to lie to anybody. I can lie to myself real easy. I can kind of hide stuff from Laura. But I felt like, I don't know, being with all these seeing eyes and ears, I guess, forced me to be honest. And it's, that was really, really pretty awesome to just finally be able to hear and say things that, I knew were there, but it's so easy not to face them. So that was really, I don't know, just a very humbling moment, to have, you have this idea, you're in a hot seat, it's going to be a podcast and there's going to be people listening, and I'm going to hold my cool. I'm going to sound like this, super awesome. We're going to be awesome. And then all of a sudden it's just a train, it was very humbling. And I appreciate everybody taking time out of it. Every time I showed up at the top row of the bleachers, didn't really feel like a commitment to me. It didn't feel like it put me out any, it's hard to be here. But then when I was on the hot seat, realizing that all these people are here, taking time out of what they do to listen and to engage with us was pretty, it was really humbling. It feels really good. Giving and receiving feedback, I think, was really important for all of us, because I think sometimes we forget how to give feedback in that particular manner, as opposed to trying to tell someone what they may or should or shouldn't do, and just being able to try to connect more and say how they felt related, and how they heard you, was really powerful. It was, I think since we just did this a week ago, I don't know if I've personally had a lot of time to really absorb all my feelings and break it down like I do in my head. But so far, there's been some really, I think for me, just having the accountability and trying, I like to be honest, and not being able to hide that from the group is probably the biggest thing for me.
Wow, that's a very interesting one, Casey, that no one has said so far about a benefit that they got to have that accountability to say, if I'm showing up and all these people are taking time out of their day, I'm not going to bring them bullshit. I'm going to, it's forcing me to be accountable. That's a really powerful statement. I appreciate you sharing that and taking the seriousness of that, to using that to motivate you to do hard work. And I don't think that you were a train wreck at all on your hot seat PS, but yeah, that's a very interesting takeaway. Thank you for sharing that.
And thank you for everything you did for us.
Absolutely. Any things that you all, I know you've all have only had a week, but any things that you've implemented, feel free to share, but probably maybe for you guys more about next steps in service to your relationship.
We got a lot of steps to go. Well, we're going to have another session with you. That's the next step. And then I don't really know where the next steps are. I mean, I'm going to work on accountability with Casey personally, and then I'm going to work on showing up in a more compassionate way. So those are my goals.
Those are beautiful steps, and they're not easy. They're simple, not easy, and likely quite effective.
I think just running with my taking that initial step to be uncomfortable, and not trying to run away so quickly from the difficult, emotion stirring conversations, and try to stay there in my adult brain. And then, it has only been a week, but one thing that Laura's really it's brought communication. I mean, we've been communicating a lot more since that session than we had previously, which is, and I think more enriched conversation. But one thing that is she really needs is some way to measure these changes, or have a list of these specific goals, and how are you doing this, and how are we going to do this? Not just, we try to communicate. So trying to understand that she has specific needs on how to hold us account, or how to see the accountability and how to see the progress. And that's different from the way I would do it, but being open and just listening and saying, okay, this is what you need. Let's figure out how to give it to you, instead of, that doesn't work. And just shutting down. So staying open.
Okay. Great. And we can certainly work on creating some of that accountability when we work together. And one more thing I want to say is, when I teach about these inner parts, sometimes there is a lot, people always want to go to, okay, so my goal is to just stay in the adult as much as possible, which is true. But I also want to make sure that I'm clear that we don't shame or guilt ourselves when that can't happen, or when it doesn't happen, because ethical non-monogamy, I think ethical non-monogamy and parenthood probably are the things that will push us and dig on us and hold up the hard mirrors, and it makes it the most difficult to stay at the top of our brain or in our more adult chair. And so when that happens, not if, to make sure that we are offering a lot of compassion for ourselves and for our partners, that it will happen. And when it happens, we have the opportunity, instead of shaming those inner parts or being mad at them or chaining the teenager in the closet, as I've heard people say, to be able to, when those parts emerge, instead to look at it as an opportunity to soothe and heal and deepen our relationship with them, so that the next time they get triggered, maybe they just knock quietly and ask for some support, instead of stealing the keys and driving our life off the cliff in a big dramatic way, to get the attention. So yes, that is a wonderful goal. And I also always ask that there's compassion with that goal. Okay.
And I add to, really, I think we could, you can do that as a team. I can sometimes recognize when my brain switches, but sometimes if Laura can recognize it and understand that maybe it's a little bit more of okay, maybe I have to, if she can control her emotions a little bit because she can see I'm running, or vice versa.
Absolutely.
So that compassion for each other.
Yes.
Thank you again.
Beautiful way to do it. Thank you both so much for jumping into the group. I was especially always really enjoyed the feedback that you gave and the reflections that you had, and same with this. So thank you so much. All right, Emma and Finn, anything that you all would like to share about being on the top row of the bleachers up here with me, the feedback, any ways that this has affected your relationship, or anything you want to share?
No, not really.
We're good. Pass.
No, absolutely. And so I think the first thing that I wanted to say before I get into that was just a thank you to Catherine, but also to everybody else who was here. That, like, first of all of you came on our show. Some of you have been on there multiple times. Even that in itself is huge to us and is so meaningful to us. And then the fact that there's, many people think of counseling or therapy as something that's shameful, right? And to even admit that to anybody, that you have gone to therapy or counseling,
can be hard.
It can be very hard. And to come on a public forum and do that therapy in front of others
takes tremendous courage.
Yeah, I am in awe of everybody here, and I think and I'm going to avoid platitudes because I'm not allowed to give them. But the fact that all of you did that, just shows the level of commitment that all of you have to each other and to your relationship, that you would come on to again, a very public platform and go through something like this that is difficult by itself. I think it's just amazing. And I think very excited from the top level of the bleachers, and having not ever gotten down in the weeds with all of you on the hot seat has kind of shown us something that, when we have people come on the show to promote something that they've created or sell something that they've created, which, part of this was helping Catherine promote this program, which is an amazing program. And before we did this, Jill and Jack reached out to us because they'd gone through it and said, this is an amazing thing. More people need to know about this. And so, that was definitely part of why we're like, yeah, this is worth it. But for us to sit here and really didn't go through the hot seat, hard work, we're basically taking the seat of the listeners that are sitting out there listening. And the way that it has impacted our relationship in the last month that we've been going through this has been tremendous. And the takeaways that we've had have been tremendous. And so whether anybody ever, signs up for this or not in the future, we know that.
But we hope lots of people do.
We do. but we know regardless of that the value that this brought to people, and that all of you brought to people just by being here and sharing your stories, is epic in so many ways. And so again, a huge thank you to all of you for being here. And I think, the takeaways for us, the timing of this is strange in a lot of ways. We are going through a lot of big changes in our life, and both our relationships, and our personal careers and our journey and where we're going and what we're doing. And so like every day for us is not every day is a fight, but like most days where like it's not just like wake up, go to the beach and hang out and drink pina coladas. And so it's like coming here on Mondays, like some days I'm like, I don't fucking want to go do this because it's hard. It's not just like sitting here listening to you all talk. Mm-hmm. And it's hard work for us to like face the shit that we're going through and face the shit that we've done for the last 10 years together and then reflect on it. And then you just start to recover from it. And then you get to do it again the next week. And so it has been a lot of work and a lot of growth for us. And we owe a lot of that to all of you for your vulnerability. Mm-hmm. I think, the main like personal takeaways that I've had have been, I think sort of like, don't really know the best way to say it, but maybe patience. And what Laura, I don't know why we always want to mix your names up, Laura and Casey. what Laura was saying about the compassion and understanding that like we're all sort of struggling, what we're doing is hard every day and that we're going to make mistakes. And rather than getting frustrated, like taking a beat and taking a breath and like, let's talk about what you said. And like, it pissed me off, but maybe you didn't mean to piss me off. Like you weren't trying, you don't come into every discussion we have trying to piss each other off. If you do, that's a different podcast. But so I think that, really trying to step back and look at the big picture and look at the team that we're building here has been huge. And just something Casey said, for real Casey, not Laura Casey, that Casey said about how we're all so different. Like when we look at this group of people, it's a wide array of ages and backgrounds and everything. We're all very different, but like the stuff we're going through is very similar, and we see ourselves in all of the different people in different times. And I think that has been really helpful because you hear somebody else saying something that you're like, that's not a good idea. And then you're like, oh shit, I did that yesterday. Maybe I shouldn't do that in the future. And so it's sort of just this mirror that you look into. And I think, again, regardless of whether you sat on the hot seat or not, that mirror gets held up in front of your face. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you for that reflection. Ben, I really hadn't thought of that you all thought about how you all really are sitting in like the listeners, where you're getting to be part of it, but not having to get on the hot seat yourselves. So thank you for sharing that perspective. That was really,
yeah. And thank you for not putting us on the hot seat.
Well, we'll see. I mean, we may get some requests, so we'll see.
I mean, now that David and Amanda brought up that it's the new kink that's going to be sweeping the globe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That might drive me away, though. I tend to shy away from popular things. So.
That's true too. All right. Thank you, Finn.
I will just add a few things. I mean, first off, I will reiterate everything Finn said. We are kind of in the listener's point of view, and it was extremely impactful for us this last month for a number of different reasons. Like Finn said, we're going through a lot of different shifts in our life, and having to show up in this way just to witness all of you really made us look at our lives, what we're doing this last month as well, in a different way. And you all made it, while it was harder, it was also it was a much more enriching month for us, I think, than it might have been without all of you and without going through this. And so I just want to thank all of you for being here and for having the courage and vulnerability to stand up and show up here. And I'm excited to get this out in the world because I hope that so many people listening will have similar reactions, and you're going to help a lot more people. And that's amazing. And we're really excited for all of that. And it wouldn't be possible without all of you here. A couple of personal takeaways. I came back to my note on the AFOL that Catherine said the other day or a few weeks ago about another fucking opportunity to learn. And that's what I feel like showing up every night here that we have and witnessing all of you. It's just, and showing up in our relationship with Finn, my relationship with Finn, but also our relationships outside of that, both family and friends, and just life in general. Like everything is an AFOL, and it's also an opportunity to grow and pushing. I've really worked hard to push myself to be uncomfortable and to be vulnerable, because a few of you said this, but like when you are uncomfortable and vulnerable, that's how you grow. And I've been working hard to do that my whole life, but especially over the last month, and it's made a big difference. It's been an emotional roller coaster, but it's also been beautiful, and I wouldn't change anything. So, thank you so much again. And I want to give all of you a big hug, and I can't do that. So when we see you in person, I'll get a big hug from all of you.
Absolutely. Hopefully, maybe December 2021, we'll have a reunion episode in person, record like, where are they now? But we'll all be in person. Except it might be hard to record because we won't be able to stop hugging the whole time.
Right?
A little awkward. All right. Well, thank you. Oh, yes. Kate, Laura.
Casey, Laura. It's Laura, but I forgot the next step was also, is we're going to do the relationship boot camp. We've committed to doing that with each other, starting with, the first lesson. And so I think we're going to continue our once weekly getting uncomfortable vibe and do the relationship boot camp together. And I'm really excited for that opportunity. So thank you, Catherine, for providing that to us. I'm super excited to do it. So
I'm so glad to hear that. And it is interesting when you make those date nights, or maybe date night isn't quite the right word, when you make that appointment with each other to do that, and sitting down and being able to dig into the work, it really can take the work that we're doing either from group coaching, or as we know, when we see each other individually, it really just takes that work and puts exponents on it, in my opinion. So thank you. I'm glad to hear that you guys are going to continue to use that beyond the course. It's great. All right. Thank you all. I don't know what else to say. Everybody said it so well, but I really appreciate Emma and Finn for giving us the opportunity giving me the opportunity to bring this platform out in a way that we can publish it and get it out to more people. And like you say, at minimum, letting them get the benefit of the top row of the bleachers. That's a really exciting. For me, it's really exciting to see my work being able to go far because of what you two have already set up with your amazing community and all the time and effort you've put into your podcast. So I really appreciate you helping me get that work out and the word out, and to be able to have another group of willing, vulnerable, brave, amazing souls to share this with. And thank you all for your faith in me to lead you. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Well,
I think that's a great spot to.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine, and once again, thank you, everybody. We'll wrap it up there.
And we're back. Thank you again. I know we've said it many, many times, but just a brief thank you to everyone involved in this project and for listening to this. We would love to hear your feedback out of Power of Witness. Please go to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and click on the Contact Us button, and you can send us an email or a voicemail and let us know what you think. We'd love to hear any feedback that you have.
Yeah, nothing else to say other than, thank you. Thank you, Catherine. And we just hope everybody enjoyed this. It was a blast. It was impactful on us, and just really excited to be getting it out there.
Yes, I only just want to say that I'm sad that it's over, and I'm so excited to get it out to your listeners and hear what they have to say. Please feel free to send me feedback. You can do it through Normalizing Non-Monogamy's website or mine, expansiveconnection.com. And I also wanted to follow up and say, now that we're 2 weeks post this last episode, that these couples are still communicating on the MeWe group and are talking about getting together for a social Zoom hour. And it's just really been great to see that the connections that they've made seem to be lasting.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think we can wrap it up. So
we did it. Yay.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thanks again, Finn and Emma, for your podcast and for going out on a limb with me to do this. Really, really appreciate you guys.
Of course. Pleasure.